Welcome everyone. I'm Elizabeth from the Crisis Center of West Texas, and today we're here alongside Safe Place of the Permian Basin to host our Domestic Violence Awareness Month launch. Generally, we host this event at the courthouse on October 1st to launch Domestic Violence Awareness Month. But with the pandemic, we are bringing you this event virtually. We still have our speakers to follow who are paving the way in our community to end domestic violence and create a safer community for survivors and their children. In partnership with Safe Place of the Permian Basin, Crisis Center West Texas has continued to offer services to victims, and you can access those services by calling the hotline at the end of this video. Both Crisis Center and Safe Place are still continuing operations at this time, as the pandemic has created an even more difficult time for victims to get and stay safe. So without further ado, we will introduce our speakers who are working tirelessly here in Ector County to end violence. Thanks so much for joining us today.
As district attorney, I've spent the last 15 years dealing with some of the most heinous crimes ever committed in this county. And I can tell you, chief among those are domestic violence cases and the results from those cases. I've seen numerous cases that because of domestic violence, it led to other tragedies in this community, including up to 3 officers being killed one day responding to a domestic violence call. I've seen the victims of domestic violence show up to our office after having been abused repeatedly by their abuser, asking for us to drop the cases. Because they rely on that person for substance, for food, for sustenance, and for livelihood. They're the father of their children, they're their husband, whatever, and they want to recant immediately and take back the fact that they want to take back their statement so that they can let this person free, and the cycle will continue. We've had to tell them multiple times no, because sometimes all we can do is say, if you can't help yourself, we're going to do the best we can to help you through this situation. Because I've seen the result of family violence and what it does to our community and what it does to individuals. And I'm always reminded of a case that I personally tried where Danny Munguia killed his girlfriend, brutally beat her to death and strangled her to death, blood all over the floor. And in the wake of that, their young child was crawling around in her own mother's blood. Alexandra was only 22 years old when Danny Munguia took her life. And I'll never forget talking to her mother about this tragedy. And we would talk about all the different times that Alexandra had actually gotten away from Danny. She'd gotten off to go somewhere else and moved off, and she always took him back into her life, and he would beat her more savagely as it went along. And we talked about why she did that, and she asked her daughter that. And she said, well, I love him. And she might have thought that was love. But love doesn't leave the bruises. Love doesn't mean leave the marks. Love doesn't kill you. And that's the problem. That's why we have to stand up and fight against this. We have to make sure that when people want to go back to this person, we have to give them the tools to get away from that person. We have to give them the strength to walk away. Let them know they can walk away from that person and their life will not only be okay, it will be better, so that we can save those lives and save their children's lives and end this cycle. And that's why we need places like Crisis Center and all the agencies that help people through this system, through this traumatic cycle, to break this cycle so that we can end this violence in our community. So we appreciate your support. We appreciate all the volunteers and all the people and all the law enforcement that go out there and put their lives on the line to protect people that are being abused. And we have to know that we have to help these people through this process so that they can have a better life, and so that they can have any life at all, because this is not a life at all when they're being subject to abuse every day. So God bless those that volunteer and take care of those families. God bless those that are out there being abused. And I want you to know there are people there to help you and get you through this, to break this cycle. Your life can be better, and we will help you get there.
Hi, I'm Michael Gerke, the Police Chief for the City of Odessa. I'm honored to be asked to speak again at the kickoff for the Domestic Violence Awareness Month launch event. Domestic violence continues to be a significant problem in the Permian Basin. The men and women in law enforcement see victims on a daily basis, and we do the best we can to stop the violence and seek justice. Let's talk about the statistics for a minute. From January the 1st of this year until the end of July, there were 928 reported instances of domestic violence in the city of Odessa. Last year, during that same time period, there were 1,068 reported instances of domestic violence in the city of Odessa. These numbers represent a 13.11% decrease in domestic violence. Now let's take that into perspective, right? In 7 months, there were 928 incidences of domestic violence, and that's a double-digit decrease. If that in itself doesn't tell you how important and how much of a significant problem this is, nothing else will. Let's consider what happens to the families and the victims. The perpetrator could very well end up in jail. And also remember, guys, if you're the perpetrator, if you get convicted of family violence, you can no longer possess or own a firearm. The victims end up with visible and invisible scars that take forever to heal if they ever heal. The children live with the consequences of seeing domestic violence for the rest of their lives. Just a few facts for you. We know through research that children, particularly the boys that are exposed to family violence, are much more likely to become abusers themselves. Children exposed to this violence are more likely to have difficulty in school, abuse drugs and alcohol, act aggressively, and suffer from depression or other mental health problems, and also engage in other criminal activity as adults. As I mentioned earlier, reported instances of domestic violence have decreased in the city of Odessa. I'm sure several factors are involved in this decrease, but I know the Odessa Police Department has seen positive results from 2 new programs implemented this year. The first is a change in policy that allows patrol officers to seek warrants for suspects of family violence and then track them down without the case first being sent to a detective. In the past, patrol officers would arrive at a scene, and if the perpetrator was there, make an arrest. If the perpetrator was not there, that case was written, forwarded to a detective, and that detective may get that case a few days later, and then begin to work on it, which allowed the perpetrator several days to reoffend. Well, what we decided to do to stop that is give the patrol officers the power to say, okay, we have probable cause to make this arrest, so we'll seek an arrest warrant from a magistrate, and then it becomes a priority to find this perpetrator. So everyone on shift starts looking for this perpetrator as time allows and call load allows. But generally speaking, we've been able to arrest most of these perpetrators the night or the day that the incident happened. So I think that has been a tremendous boost for us. The second program is called LAP. LAP stands for the Lethality Assessment Program. This program is a partnership that we're in with the Crisis Center and with the Ector County Sheriff's Office. Simply put, this program mandates that officers must ask a series of questions for serious domestic violence events. The questions have a numerical value and a certain threshold reached. If a certain threshold is reached, then the patrol officer makes a call to the Crisis Center. A Crisis Center employee will then attempt to talk to the victim and offer services. Now, sometimes those victims take those, take the services, and sometimes they don't. From March to September of this year, 94 lap interviews were completed by officers with the Odessa Police Department, and of those, 34 times people accepted services from the Crisis Center. The goal of this program is to remove the victim from an abusive environment. This step is very crucial because many victims feel that they're stuck in their situation. The abuser may control finances. The abuser may have just emotionally and mentally beat the victim down to the point where they don't feel like they can live without the abuser. Sometimes the victim may not even, or may just fear that there's a breakup of the family if they come forward. So all those things contribute to this. So that's why it's so important for us to get the Crisis Center involved in a very early stage so that maybe we can remove the victim from the offender. So what can you do about the problem? Well, don't look the other way when you suspect domestic violence. Call law enforcement. Don't believe that it's simply not your concern and you don't want to get involved. Think about the victim. Think about the children and what they're going through. Take action. The Permian Basin is made up of tough, resilient folks. As a community, I know we can band together to lower the instances of domestic violence. We are and have always been stronger together than we are apart. Thank you and have a blessed day.
Hi, I'm Sheriff Mike Griffis. I'm here to speak to you on behalf of the Ector County Sheriff's Office and all of our personnel. We want all of you to be aware of domestic violence, and we don't want any of you to be a victim of domestic violence. I have two daughters, both of which have been victims of domestic violence, and it's a horrible thing. If you're a victim of domestic violence, you call us, you call the local authorities, and we will get you hooked up with services that will help you endure this traumatic situation. Love is supposed to feel good. It don't hurt. So don't put up with it, get out of it, and call us. Thank you.
So this October, we're spreading awareness for domestic violence. Domestic violence is defined as intimate partner physical violence, intimate partner contact sexual violence, and or intimate partner stalking. The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence reports that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men will be victims of domestic violence at some point in their life. Additionally, the Texas Department of Public Safety has reported that 1 in 3 Texans will experience domestic violence at some point in their lifetime in their tenure here in the state. Unfortunately, those numbers make up 15% of all violent crimes in the state of Texas, with 34% of the victims being women and 35.1% of those victims being men. With the COVID-19 pandemic and the global crisis that we're facing, coupled with the economic downturn with the slowdown of oil, we've seen an increased number of domestic violence cases here in the Permian Basin. We also know with the increase of reported cases, there have to be an increase of unreported cases. So because of this, I'm going to task you all with something that I want you to think about every single day, not just in October, not just in 2020, but every day for the rest of your life. And that is to examine what you tolerate. And if you find during one of your daily examinations that someone is treating you in a way that is unacceptable or inappropriate, then I'm encouraging you to seek help. There are agencies and resources available to you like the Crisis Center here and Safe Place. Additionally, you can call the Odessa Police Department, the Ector County Sheriff's Department, or the Texas Department of Public Safety. If you are uncomfortable reaching out to a law enforcement agency, then you also have the Ector County Attorney's Office and the Ector County District Attorney's Office available to you. You do not pay attorney's fees for either one of those agencies, and you do not pay a filing fee to Ector County or to the state for an application for protective order. So I would encourage you to seek help. You are not alone, and if you are scared, do it scared. Just remember to be safe, wash your hands, and be kind.
During this month of October, we focus our efforts to raise awareness of domestic violence. We mourn the victims, support the survivors, and push resources to anyone who needs them. There's a new resource in the fight against domestic violence that's now available to all Texans. It's called the Texas Protective Order Registry. I worked in the Texas legislature to pass Monica's Law, which established the Texas Protective Order Registry, which is an online, searchable, public database listing protective orders issued by Texas courts as a result of domestic violence after a due process hearing. The idea for Monica's Law and this new Texas Protective Order Registry resulted from a tragedy that occurred in Odessa in 2015, when Monica Deming, a 32-year-old mother, was shot in her home by an abusive ex-boyfriend. Monica and her family were unaware that her killer had 2 previous protective orders ordered against him that had been easily hidden by him and concealed from his victims, including Monica. It's been too easy to hide. Domestic violence protective orders have historically been easy for abusers to conceal because the protective orders were only registered in the community where they were issued. In working with Monica's family to change Texas law, we wanted to make vital court records about domestic violence perpetrators more accessible so that abusers can't hide their history of violence from new victims. In short, the Texas Protective Order Registry is designed to be an online tool to save lives and help prevent domestic violence. Also, because of the Texas Protective Order Registry established by Monica's Law, law enforcement and courts all over the state will have more readily available access to this critical information. Doing so will inhibit the ability of repeat offenders to jump from county to county committing acts of domestic violence. Monica's Law sadly cannot take back the domestic violence tragedies that have claimed too many lives, but now the memory of Monica and all other victims can live on through this Texas Protective Order Registry, and it will help save lives and prevent future senseless deaths at the hands of domestic violence. The Texas Protective Order Registry is live now. On September 1st, 7 counties were onboarded and began inputting protective orders into the system in the first phase of launching the new registry, and more than 50 orders were inputted in just the first couple of weeks. Phase 2 begins on October 15th, the date that all Texas court clerks are required to start entering domestic violence protective orders into the Texas Protective Order Registry. Of course, survivors who wish to protect their privacy will be given that option. The Texas Protective Order Registry can be viewed at texascourts.gov/judicial-data/protective-order-registry. October is about remembering people like Monica, whose life was cut short by domestic violence. It's also about spreading awareness, understanding, supporting, and providing hope. Incidents of domestic violence, sadly, are on the rise in 2020. If you're a victim, if you're a survivor, don't be silent. There are resources like those provided by the wonderful team at the Crisis Center of West Texas that can help you and keep you safe. Remember, we're all in this together.
Hello, I'm Crystal Peter, and I'm the victim advocate for a Safe Place of the Permian Basin here in the Odessa non-resident office. I just want to thank everybody who's virtually watched our virtual domestic violence awareness launch today. Of course, it's a little different for all of us, but we're still very proud that we're able to have the speakers today to give the message that unfortunately domestic violence is still a huge problem. We are definitely working with an epidemic within a pandemic, which does not make things any easier. But fortunately, we have fantastic law enforcement. We have fantastic judges, and we have fantastic domestic violent resources with Crisis Center of West Texas and Safe Place of the Permian Basin. Remember that we are here. We are here to help. We are here to give those free services. Both agencies, again, are continuing to work safely through the pandemic. We provide individual counseling for victims of domestic violence. Both agencies do have a shelter for those victims and their children. We offer a batterer intervention program at both agencies, all free of charge. So please call the number on your screen if you or anyone you know is needing those services. So again, thank you to all our speakers for being here today, and thank you for everyone who has logged in to watch this.